Hey everybody, it's Clint. Hope you're doing well today. Today I'm going to show you how I turn a jug. If you watched my last video, it showed how I mix and process my clay and get it ready for turning. Well, it's been aging now about 2 days, so it's ready for turning. The aging process just helps it to have a little more plasticity and makes it where you can shape it a little bit better. And I like to let it age a couple of days so it's ready to go now. But I'll take it out of the bag and slice off the amount that I need. I'm going to make a 1 gallon jug today, and I use 7 pounds for a 1 gallon jug. I weigh it right here. Get it to just the right amount. And then I start wedging it. If you can see right here, there's a wire. And wedging is where you slice it across a wire and slap it together, and that removes any air that's in it, and you can pick out rocks or sticks or any type of organic material that may burn out in the firing process later. And I slap it together several times, and that takes care of all of that. As you can see, there's a little piece of something right there. I just remove that and keep going. Occasionally there'll be a larger rock or bigger piece of material, but usually this is a pretty clean, consistent clay, so I don't have to pick out a lot of that. See, there's one right there. It's just a tiny rock. That's just part of using local good clay. Occasionally you'll get some little rocks and trash in it, but to me that just adds to the character and uniqueness. There's a larger one. You can see that one really well. There's one. There's another one. Okay, that should have it. Now I'll work it into a ball. This is called balling the clay. You just make it into a round shape and pound it like that. Spin it around and sort of angle it up. That's sort of how I do mine. And then this edge, I like to sort of just pat around that just to make sure it's tightly compacted in. Sometimes it'll get some little cracks in it after you put it on the wheel, if it's a less plastic clay like this. But as you can see, that's sort of what it looks like right there. Okay, now I'll take the camera in here to where the wheel is. And start turning. This is my wheel. It's a foot-powered treadle wheel. It's got a large flywheel on the base. It's real heavy, so it keeps the top rotating. a crankshaft to keep it turning with, and then a shaft running up to the head block. And I kick this portion back and forth to keep it going. I'll place the clay right there. And set the camera up right here. Hopefully that'll stay there. And then start turning. Let me get it, make sure it's secured on there. If you don't get it on there real good, it'll come loose right in the middle of making it. Alright, I get the wheel going good like that. Wet it down real good. Then I start centering it. The centering process is one of the hardest parts of pottery to learn. I know it took me a couple of years to get to where I was pretty good at centering and even turning a decent cylinder. But it's all about repetitivity and practice. You just get better and better at it. If you have enough determination, you can figure it out. Okay, that's centered pretty good. Now I'll open the ball up with my palm. This part you have to be real careful because you don't want to get the bottom too thin, and you don't want it to be too thick either. If it's too thin, it'll have a tendency to crack, and if it's too thick, it'll just be too heavy and it won't be as even and consistent. It takes longer to fire it. You run into a lot of problems if it's too thick also. But anyway, I open it up like that, stick my thumb in it a little. Even that out a little bit. Then I pull the wall up. I like to keep it going in a way where the bottom is wider than the top. If you start getting the top wider than the bottom, then it starts to lose its stability. Next, I'll push that in just a little bit. And then start drawing it up with my knuckle. This will get it taller. And each time you draw it up, it gets it a little bit thinner. I like to put my hands on the top of it and center the top also. That keeps it balanced really well. I'm going to make this one ovoid. That's where it's got a lot of shape to the center of it. So I'm going to pull it out a little bit taller and more narrow. I like to do that on my ovoid pieces. Ovoid forms were forms that potters made in the United States during the pre-1860 period, following the war. They became a lot more cylindrical, straight-sided, and that's how you can date a lot of the older pieces. But I've always thought the ovoid pieces were just a lot more elegant and refined, and they had just a better look to them. As they became more and more cylindrical, they became a little more crude, and they took on a little more of a manufactured look, I guess. Okay, now that we've got that pulled up, that bottom, you've got to get it just right. And the trick is, too, when you make an ovoid piece, is that you don't want to, especially with this clay, you don't want to get the wall too thin. This is a pretty good clay, but it's still not the most plastic in the world, so if you run the wall too thin, occasionally it will split and fall down, but it's still pretty good overall for a local dug clay. Trim the bottom off next. This is my chip. It's just a handmade wood chip that I use. I made it out of a piece of oak years ago. It's about worn down. I about need to make a new one. This wheel has a metal head block and wood on metal. It just wears the wood down. A lot of people like to use a metal chip, but I just got in the habit and got used to using a wooden one, so that's what I've always used. Now what I'll do is I'll press into the chip now from the inside and smooth the outside out. I do that several times just to get the shape just right. There's a lot of potters that do production pottery, flower pots, and more mass-produced items. And they have a set number of moves that they do on one. Like, for instance, they'll do 3 draws with their knuckle and 3 draws with their chip, you know, or a different number in that combination so that they can produce it faster. Me, I don't have any reason to really get in a hurry, so I just take my time and try to get it to look just like I want to. It's pretty stuff, but people aren't using it, so it's more for decoration, and people buy most of mine more as a piece of art rather than a functional item. Although you can use it as a functional item. It's it's waterproof and it's fully vitrified. I fire it to cone 10, which is pretty close to 2400 degrees. I just keep shaping it like this. This part you have to be real careful with. It'll fall down on you if you bulge it too much. And once I get it to just the right shape that I wanted, I'll start closing the top in to make the jug top. Looks like it probably needs a little bit more bulge to it. One interesting thing about them too is when you're right up close to one, it'll sometimes look like it's got enough bulge to it, but then when you stand back away from it, it looks like it needs just a little bit more. So, and also when you start to close the top in, it'll change the shape of it some. So sometimes you have to go back in and shape it a little bit more, just to get it just right. At least that's how I do it. I mean, if there's different ways that everybody does this, and this is just my way. And like I say, I'm not a production potter, so this technique is a little slower than what production pottery would be. They would have probably already had 2 or 3 made in production pottery by now. Okay, now that looks about like where I want it. So I'll get the water out of the bottom with this. If you leave the water in the bottom, that'll crack the bottom. So I get that all out of the bottom, then start closing in the top, just like this. I keep it, push it in, and then just try to keep it centered as I go. And to get the clay to pull on up there, I push that part in some with the chip. Closing that top up. Sometimes you can push it on in a little more. And what I like to do is put my thumb into it and give it sort of a what's called a conical rim. This conical style rim is what the early White County potters made 150, 200 years ago. Its origins are out of North Carolina, actually, which is where a lot of them were from. The Craven family and some of the others had migrated through there. But I just have always liked the look of that top, and let's try to pull that top up a little too and get it a little taller. Okay, that looks about right. We can smooth out that low spot right in there a little bit if we want to. There's a rock, just a little one, nothing too bad. Right. We can cover that up though. There. Now, yeah, let me push that in just a little more. I like to get them just right. And now for decoration, I take an old antique coggle wheel. I found this in an antique store, I think, years ago. Clean it out real good. Sometimes it gets dried clay in it. And I roll that over the surface like this. And then I take a paintbrush end and incise lines on it. And it's a finished jug. And next I'll take it off the wheel. This is really hard to do. I never did get in the habit of using lifters. They make lifters that will lift them off. But I was always making a lot of different sizes. So I had different bottom widths, so I found it easier just to remove them like this, very carefully. I set it onto this. And then move it over here to where the others are. And then I let it dry a while. As you can see, these are ready to decorate once the wall hardens up, and then they're ready to add whatever decoration you want to put on them once they harden, handles and whatever you're putting on them. These are going to have some eagles with flags, and I'll do another video showing how that process is done. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you like it, click like and subscribe. I appreciate it, and y'all have a great day.